Hello, this is part 3 of our look at the tools for Photoshop. And we left off with the paint bucket, and so we are going to move down to the next set. Now this one I did not speak of. I'm not working with 3D for this class. Alright, so blur tool is kind of how it sounds. There are a few different ways to do blurring, and I'll go through some of the other stuff at the top, which would be under filter if you want an entire image blurred. But if you want something part of an image blurred, or a specific aspect, then you would use this tool. And this one will utilize the brush. Again, you can use different textures, but I'm just going to use a simple one. You can change the size, you can change the hardness. Again, it'll just affect the blurring of the edge if it's less hard. And just for a quick little demo here, I'm going to zoom in to the image a little bit more. But if I wanted that one completely blurry for some reason, I can just be on it for a while. And I'm holding down and moving around at the same time. So if I really wanted an exaggerated blurred background, I could do that. I could move around and choose what I would like to have sharp. So to see it before being affected, I better zoom in again. You just go to open, so you can see it was sharper. And so I find it works for all sorts of different things. I do use it more than I would have ever thought. For editing, I do if I want the background blurred out more, if the photograph, maybe wasn't taken at the perfect setting for the depth of field, I can manipulate it here. Sharpen tool does what it sounds like also. Again, you choose the size and the hardness, and I'll just bump up in size of it so we can see it better. What it tends to do, though, is, sometimes you want to salvage an image that maybe was a little out of focus. It doesn't work awesome, not going to lie to you. It's not magic. It will help an image a little bit, but it starts to make it not just sharp but grainy. So you can see back here, I'm trying to pull out some detail here. And yes, it certainly is. It appears a little bit more sharp, but there's a point at which it just becomes ugly and gross. And you can see here what it's happening. It's just calling out more color and sharpening some things up that it just doesn't look great. From a distance it might, but if it's a closer up image, it does not work well. Smudge tool, to be honest, this is such a silly tool, I don't even know why it exists other than for fits and giggles from someone on the Adobe team a long time ago. You'll see in a second what I mean. So all it does is it just pulls the stuff. I honestly have never used it in my life for anything serious. It's just kind of fun to muck it through an image once in a while. So, if you can use it in an interesting way, please do. I suppose for some painting techniques it could be helpful, but overall I've never used it for anything other than fun, not for serious. Moving on down, we now have the dodge tool, the burn tool, and the sponge tool. They are all related, at least these two top ones are related to old school photography that you would do in a darkroom. So for this next set, because they're all about darkroom photography, I thought maybe you should just, in case you've never done darkroom photography or don't know anything about it, this is an enlarger. And basically, light passes through here, through the negative, and down here is where you would have a piece of photo paper here to take the image. Now, it's all about the amount of light. So if you have strong light and on it for a long time, the blacks will get blacker and gray areas will end up being more dark. If you have less light, then the thing feels lighter, or your image will be lighter. So taking that into consideration as we work through here, I'm just going to duplicate this file. The first one is the dodge tool, and the dodge tool is for lightning. It can, basically when you're talking about the enlarger, somebody would take a little paddle. You can see the image looks like this right here, it kind of looks like a ping pong paddle. So they would take it and interrupt the light. And they basically, in order to get a softer edge, you would simply just move around this little paddle or different size things, different sizes of paddles, and different distances from the light source in order to get different areas that are lighter. And conversely, the burn tool is where you allow more light in on a certain section. So maybe you cut off a little corner, maybe it's a square size because you want to get the square part of a photograph. Maybe it's a building or something to have more light than the rest of it. So you manipulate light by cutting holes or opening up the space more. So for the dodge tool, again, it's brush based. You choose the brush, you choose the hardness, and then one thing here you need to be careful of is you can choose what thing you're wanting to lighten up. You can lighten shadows, you can lighten midtones or highlights. So we'll just do a quick little thing through here. So I'm going to make this bigger so we can really see it. Okay. So on this one, I'll do shadows first. So shadows are the darker areas. So I can lighten up, that area. You can see here, even though I'm on it, it takes a while for the other light stuff to change. If I change it to midtones, it'll lighten up all that gray in the background. And if I want to lighten up anything else, I can do the highlights, and that will simply, go to your lightest areas, and it will lighten that up also. And exposure, if you want to really have a light touch to it, you would do a lot less of an exposure of light. If you want really rushed, harsh, then you can do the higher exposure. When it comes to, let me just restart this image. When it comes to the burning tool, it's the same idea but opposite, of course, since it's going darker instead of lighter. And, I often will do this. I do use the burn tool quite often, specifically for photography, for, lightening eyes using the dodge tool and burning in things like eyebrows and eyelashes to pop eyes a little bit more. I'll use that. But anyway, for this tool here, while it's on shadows, that would mean that I could deepen this color here. And you can see it's pretty quick and pretty intense. And you can see clearly what that difference is. Midtones be like the lighter colors, so if I wanted all that stuff in the background just a little bit darker, that's possible. And then the highlights tend to be a little, it just basically feels like it adds gray to them. Not perfect, but it's something. And then the sponge tool is a little different than the rest. The sponge tool has the ability to either desaturate or saturate, so you have to be mindful of which one you're wanting. Again, choose brush size and hardness, and then I'll go ahead and make this big so we can see it. So here I have saturate, and that means that it's going to try to pump up the colors here. So you see that feels a little bit otherworldly now. If I want it to desaturate, again, let's see if I take the color out of these up here. It doesn't take too long. Desaturate, they're all helpful little things to keep around. I definitely do find myself saturating parts of images here and there. The pen tool, we're actually going to skip this one right now because we will do all of this within Illustrator. There's no need for you to do it here, knowing what you can do it there. The only thing I will say about this one is after you have created a shape using this tool, you have to know how to use paths. And the Illustrator is not quite the same, so I'll just go ahead and run through this really quick. This might be something, if you're curious, after we do Illustrator, you might want to come back and mess around with Photoshop. I'm just going to make a real basic shape here. And what I want to show you is that it created its own path right there. Now the shape is hard to see. I'm going to go ahead and hide this so you can just see the outline a little bit better. And if I wanted to change this, I can. I might just go ahead and add an anchor here and move it up. And you can move these, with the move tool. Yeah. So it's, it can kind of be a fun thing to do depending on what you might need it for. They're time consuming. But let's say you needed it at this point. I'll turn my layers back on. And on this path, it's a work path right now, but if I wanted to make it into a selection, I'd have to do make selection from it, 0 Pixels means that it will adhere exactly to the lines you created. If you do a bigger number, it'll fuzz it out a little bit. And so you can see there's my selection made from the path. And then that way I could go back to my layers, make sure I'm on the right layer, and then delete whatever I might need to. It's generally for more complex shapes because the lasso tool, as you can see, is pretty rudimentary, but you can get something done real quick. But if it's a big job and it needs to be really ornate, you will want to cut whatever it is out with the pen tool instead. Alright, next one for the text tool. You know, Photoshop can be used for graphic design. It's not ideal. You're usually going to want to use either Illustrator or InDesign, preferably. But if you're in a pinch and you need to make a poster, technically you can. And so for the horizontal text, you just literally just have to click to start your cursor from working. So it picks up whatever color you have in the foreground. You can change this color. And if I want that to change, I'll have to go and actually select those things. There we go. Size-wise, of course, this is a bit small. I just think it's pretty big. For the text here, these are defaults. You do not have to use them. You could type in whatever size you would like. And, of course, the basic things you'd expect for fonts is a list of fonts, sizes, and looks of them. Are they bold, italics, etc.? And also, if you have multiple lines, is it centered, is it left or right aligned? And, you know, there's nothing too fancy. If you wanted to change a couple colors in here, you can. You just have to select them. There you go. Now, there are more options under here. Vertical text type tool. That doesn't seem probably very complicated. That's exactly what it sounds like it does. Yep, 7. And then these ones, we won't get into masks yet. I'll be covering that a little bit later. But basically the overall thing for Photoshop is, yes, you can do text, but you can't do very complex text. It's pretty rudimentary, or you have to spend a ton of time to get it to do exactly what you would like it to do.